Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. At the top, I always want to remind everybody, please go subscribe. I'm on iTunes, I'm on Google Play, I'm on Stitcher. Rate, comment, subscribe. So this has been a rather interesting week in media news. And by interesting, I mean everything's gone pretty much full dumb. We're going to start out with the Sinclair Broadcasting scandal. Basically, if you haven't already seen, I'll put the link to the video in the show notes. Deadspin did a mashup video of anchors from the Sinclair Broadcasting Corporation. They handed down this kind of like prepared PSA sort of speech thing for anchors to read out. And the way Deadspin mashed it up, it does look creepy as hell. And basically, everyone's comparing it to like proof of life videos. They all look like they're hostages reading off of this script. And I actually want to go ahead and just read you a version of the script so that you can see exactly what it is that we're talking about. So the prepared statement went like this. Hi, I'm insert anchor name A here, and I'm insert anchor name B here. Our greatest responsibility is to serve our, wherever you are, communities. We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that news outlet produces. But we're concerned about the troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country. The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets push these same fake news stories that just aren't true without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platform to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to a democracy. At insert channel name here, it's our responsibility to pursue and report the truth. We understand truth is neither politically left nor right. Our commitment to factual reporting is the foundation of our credibility, now more than ever. But we are human, and sometimes our reporting might fall short. If you believe our coverage is unfair, please reach out to us by going to insert channel name website here and clicking on content concerns. We value your comments. We will respond back to you. We work very hard to seek the truth and strive to be fair, balanced, and factual. We consider it our honor, our privilege, and our responsibility to deliver the news every day. Thank you for watching, and we appreciate your feedback. Now, if you're thinking that that sounded somewhat benign, you're right. But since it made mention of fake news, and fake news equals Trump, and Trump equals bad, everybody lost their shit over the fact that these stations were, I guess, allegedly forced to do this little PSA. It seems to kind of be up in the air. I know at least one station just point blank refused to do it. But ultimately it started up this discussion of fake news and, oh my God, these stations are so biased. How are we supposed to know that the news that they're telling us is true? What if they're fake news? Which, first of all, this is my take on local news in general, is that it's trash anyway. I'm a libertarian. I'm politically active online. I deal with enough negativity, and local news is pretty much just the epitome of if it bleeds, it leads. And I'm not really down with starting and ending my day hearing about all the people that got robbed or killed or raped in my community, which that is 96% of what local news is. Despite that, I've seen people make the argument that what about Auntie Grandma Mima that lives out in BFE and she only has access to this one news station, and oh my God, they might be brainwashing Granty Mima, which, first of all, no. FCC regulations prohibit any one broadcasting group from owning over 50% of any individual market, which means that if Sinclair owns 50% of a market, that means somebody else owns the other 50% of the market, which means you can, wait for it, just change the fucking channel if you don't like what's on the channel. The same way you can with national news, you can do it with local news. It's really just that simple. That's all you gotta do. And if Granty Mima Auntie wants to watch that channel, that's on her. That's her right. And just because you don't like the message, maybe she does. I don't know. I'm assuming she's watching that channel and not another channel because she likes that one better. The funniest thing about the whole Sinclair Broadcasting thing to me, though, is the fact that it proves once again that legacy media doesn't really grasp how the internet and social media works. Because if you did, you probably wouldn't pull a stunt like this at a time when you're trying to do a merger with Tributes. This probably just killed your merger. All it takes is for a few people to notice and one site to make a mashup of you doing this stupid little PSA, which, by the way, way to interject yourself into a conversation that nobody was having about you anyway. When people are talking about fake news, they're not talking about local media. It really had nothing to do with you, so congratulations for your little half-baked PSA killing your merger. It's just such a needless, unforced error at what could possibly be the worst time for Sinclair to ever do anything that stupid. And this story also kicked up the, oh my god, media conglomerates are going to take over the country and all of the news, which, no, for reasons I've already said, but it also ignores the fact that we live in a time where there are so many news sources. You can get it from television, the internet, social media, podcast. Really, I mean, you can even use print newspapers. They do still have those. There's no one way for any one entity to completely control the news. It's a ridiculous argument that just completely ignores the fact that we live in a time where it's physically impossible. This isn't like ye olden days where you had 3 channels on the television and had maybe a handful of national newspapers. Back then, you could actually exert a level of control over the news that was reported, and there was a level of control exercised over the news that was reported. But we don't live in that time anymore. And the whole reason why we don't is because A, we have cable news now, B, we have the internet, and C, it gave rise to alternative media as we know it. We used to call it alternative media back in the days when Drudge was new and Daily Kos and everything like that. And it kind of gave rise to this whole idea of getting news from the internet and from alternate sources. Another ridiculous claim that's been thrown out there is that this is like state-run media, which, first of all, this is the exact opposite of state-run media. It is privately run media. And if you're going to compare what Sinclair did to state-run media, I'm going to need you to take a step back and look at what state-run media actually looks like, because it looks nothing like our media landscape. Do not even attempt to compare the two things. There is no comparison. But on the topic of state-run media, let's go ahead and use that to pivot to my next topic that I want to talk about, which is an area of the news. It's not really the news, but this kind of, I call them the op-ed cops. Basically, this idea that our nation's opinions pages seem to be, let's say, trying to enforce a bit of ideological purity, and people outside of the op-ed pages seem to be interested in pursuing a certain level of ideological purity. There seems to be this idea that the op-ed pages for places like New York Times, Washington Post, The Atlantic should only be home to certain people with certain lines of thought. And every time anybody wants to hire somebody that doesn't toe that party line, either people within the organization and without the organization kind of completely lose their shit. We saw it when New York Times hired Barry Weiss. We saw it when The Atlantic hired Kevin Williamson. And it's just this idea that it's lefties seem to feel like these op-ed pages are op-ed pages and not anybody else's op-ed pages, and that you can't have ideas that don't really toe that line. Which is really stupid, because the whole point of having an op-ed section is their opinion editorials. They're people's opinions. And if you want to present yourself as a news outlet that has some level of diversity of thought, then yes, you have to have a diversity of opinions on your opinions page. That's why it is an opinions page. And for a group of people that seem to be so devoted to the idea of diversity and openness, it sure seems like anytime anybody wants to express an opinion that does not agree with yours, you want to go ahead and just shut them down. But since you have to look like you're still embracing ideological diversity, it leads to this very interesting conversation that I see crop up. I saw it happen a little bit after the Barry Weiss hiring, and especially after the Kevin Williamson hiring over at The Atlantic, of why can't we get the quote-unquote good conservatives to come write for us, which is incredibly, incredibly so rich and tone deaf and just completely ignorant of the environment that you've created that, you know what, I'll engage you. I'll explain to you the 2 reasons why you cannot get the quote-unquote good conservatives that you seek. First off, why would any conservative who is a talented writer, a talented opinion maker, and has options want to go work for an outlet where you know your coworkers are hostile to your very existence on the planet, let alone your employment at one of these places? I go back to what happened to Barry Weiss after the whole tweet scandal blew up over the Olympics. She tweeted out a tweet that probably wasn't in the best taste, mainly because it was a Hamilton joke. But what ended up happening was that there were other op-ed writers, reporters, workers at the New York Times who created a private Slack channel to complain about her and other people, notably conservatives, that were employed at the New York Times, and to go around bitching about microaggressions and how these people shouldn't work here. And why would anybody want to subject themselves to that? I mean, as far as I know, I don't think anybody was ever disciplined over that. And God bless Barry Weiss. She still works over there at the New York Times. I mean, I don't know how you do that, because that's gotta sting. I mean, you're human. To know that people are talking about you behind your back has gotta hurt. And for anybody looking at that from the outside and thinking, hey, I might want to go work for the New York Times, you look at stuff like that and you're like, why the fuck would I want to go work in a toxic work environment with people who hate me for my views? Like, why would any sane, rational person be like, yeah, that sounds like a wonderful idea. Let me go work somewhere where people are going to talk shit about me behind my back on a private fucking Slack channel. And they're going to treat me like shit. Like, why? You can't recruit anybody decent under these sorts of work circumstances. When you allow a hostile work environment to exist towards people that have conservative views, and then you want to sit here and scratch your head and wonder why you can't recruit people with conservative views to come write for you, it's kind of like, does the light bulb ever go off? Like, do you not understand why somebody would look at your organization and be like, I don't think so. I think I'm going to go take my talent someplace where I might actually enjoy my work and be happy and work with people who don't think I'm the scum of the earth. The second reason, and this one, even if you fix the first reason, I don't really know how you get around this, is that a funny thing happened when you didn't employ any of these conservative voices. They went out and made their own platforms. They started their own sites. They started their own YouTube channels. They started their own podcasts. They started their own Patreons. And now we're at the point where legacy media is realizing that they need these voices, but those conservative voices don't need legacy media anymore. They went out and got their own fame and their own notoriety, completely bypassing legacy media. So now it's like, why would anybody want to go that route just strictly for the fact that you don't have to? The established talent that's already out there, like the Ben Shapiros, the Dave Rubins of the world, they're not going to waste their time writing for your publication because they don't have to. They have their own platforms to maintain and they don't need you. And even anybody who is an up-and-coming conservative or libertarian voice is going to look at the landscape and be like, okay, I can go into media, I can go work for a news outlet and make this much money and maybe get this kind of notoriety. Or I can go try to be the next Ben Shapiro, or I can go try to be the next Dave Rubin. I can go that route and be, first off, probably a lot more financially successful, a lot more visible, and not have to deal with all the bullshit that goes along with trying to work with legacy media and people that don't like you. All you have to do is look at the level of success that conservative and libertarian YouTubers have had, conservative and libertarian podcasters have had, and parlay that into what this probably means for those people financially. Just at that alone, you're not going to pay somebody what these people are making using their own platforms. And you're not going to be offering them the kind of freedom that one has when they have their own platform. So it's really going to be a tough sell going forward to try to get any up-and-coming talent, because they're going to look at this landscape and be like, I can do A or I can do B. And I'd probably be a hell of a lot happier doing B, so I'm going to go do B. Basically, legacy media, you waited too long to have this come to Jesus moment. And all the voices that you want to currently have, or any of the up-and-coming voices you would like to get, are not going to be going in that direction. They're going to be going to work for other outlets that either have conservative or libertarian views, or they're just going to start their own platforms. Just in case you think I'm overstating my cause here, the Atlantic came in right before I started recording this, which, round of applause for my procrastination on this one, because this just completely caps this off, proves my point 1000% of why any conservative would just look at legacy media, especially these places like New York Times, specifically the Atlantic right now, and be like, you know what? No, fuck you. Because they have fired Kevin Williamson. And I want to read you a part of the statement from Jeffrey Goldberg on exactly why they fired him. So here it goes. Late yesterday afternoon, information came to our attention that has caused us to reconsider this relationship. Specifically, the subject of one of Kevin's most controversial tweets was also a centerpiece of a podcast discussion in which Kevin explained his views on the subject of the death penalty and abortion. The language he used in this podcast, and in my conversations with him in recent days, made it clear that the original tweet did, in fact, represent his carefully considered views. The tweet was not merely an impulsive, decontextualized, heat-of-the-moment post, as Kevin had explained it. Furthermore, the language used in the podcast was callous and violent. This runs contrary to the Atlantic's tradition of respectful, well-reasoned debate and to the values of our workplace. Kevin is a gifted writer, and he has been nothing but professional in all of our interactions. But I have come to the conclusion that the Atlantic is not the best fit for his talents, and so we are parting ways. Dude, get the fuck out of here with that. First off, if you're not familiar, Kevin Williamson used to write for National Review, actually got lured away from National Review to go to the Atlantic, which that's another reason why this is just such a fucking dick move. But the tweet in question and his views on abortion is that abortion is murder, and that those who have abortions performed should be charged with murder, and his ideal would be to death by hanging for people who have abortions, which admittedly is a fucking stupid thing to say. Saying that people should be hanged for having abortions is not the rightest thing that could come out of your mouth. But here's my problem with this statement. First of all, everybody knew that this was Williamson's stance. He's never lied about it. Everybody's known about it. Everybody's talked about that tweet ad infinitum ever since the tweet actually landed. This isn't some shit that you just found out. This is stuff that people have known for years. Second of all, the podcast that is referenced in that statement was from 2014. Again, this has been known for years. You knew this before you hired him. You fucking defended the tweet. And now all of a sudden, what? You want to say that you want to play stupid and act like you didn't know? And also, you want to say that Kevin misrepresented himself and his views? The fuck out of here with that, man. Why? That's just a point blank lie. Like, why do you want to lie about this? This is so fucking infuriating. Like, I don't even care about Kevin Williamson. But just this whole situation is the extreme, perfect example of why you are never going to get conservative or libertarian voices to go write for these op-ed pages. Because this is what happens every time. You get hired by these places, And then all of a sudden, somebody gets a bug up their ass, either people that actually work for the publication or people that want to get on Twitter and start dragging you for shit. And eventually you fucking cave and you leave these people out in the cold. And it's like, why would anybody bother? Like, good luck, Atlantic, because you're never going to get another conservative or libertarian to ever want to write for you again. The ones that do work for you are probably looking for other jobs right now. And this is because this is the environment that you created. And you want to cave to stupid fucking Twitter mobs and people that care about microaggressions and bullshit like that. Like, no. Start standing up for yourself. Stop caving to these people. Like, who cares? It's not their publication. It's yours. If you're the editor-in-chief and you hire someone, tell everyone else to go pound sand if they don't like it. It's not their job. It's not their decision. It's your decision. Like I said, I don't even care about Kevin Williamson. I'm not a fan of his. But this shit right here needs to stop. Somebody needs to put their foot down and say, no, we made a hiring decision. This is our decision. And we're not going to let you have your little private Slack channels dogging people. We're not going to leave you to these Twitter mobs, which, by the way, that's another thing that happens every time something like this happens. All of a sudden, everybody wants to go back into this person's past to try to tear them apart, to try to get them fired, which that's fucked up. Trying to get somebody fired because you don't like their views is fucked up. It also completely dismisses this idea that you're about intellectual diversity. No, you're not. You're for people that agree with you, and anybody who does not agree with you deserves to get fired, deserves to have no money, just get savaged online. You don't really care what happens to those people. So no, you don't care about intellectual diversity. You care about having your little narrow viewpoints, and only your little narrow viewpoints get viewed on these platforms. And so you want to deplatform everybody that doesn't agree with you. Which, by the way, as I pointed out earlier, how's that working out for y'all? Those people have jobs now. They made their own platforms. They don't need you. So, yeah, good fucking job. Okay, I really need to wrap this up because I'm just angry now and I'm at the point of ranting, so we really need to just go ahead and wrap this up. But if you enjoyed this, like I said, please subscribe. I'm on iTunes, I'm on Google, I'm on Stitcher. Rate, comment, subscribe. Check out the show notes. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Take care, and until next time.